while there are some clear negative effects, loss of income, loss of tourism receipts, there are also potentially some positive effects. For example, through import substitution, more domestic production, an increase in labor force. These are things that under certain conditions could be positive for the economy.
I'm B2B Cambodia's Darshana. Thanks for watching. Today I'll be speaking with Mr. Milan Thomas, ADB Country Economist for Cambodia, to discuss a recent report released by the Asian Development Bank on US tariffs and their impacts, as well as to understand the ADB's economic outlook for the country in the short and long term. Hi Milan, it's great to be here at the ADB office in Phnom Penh and really appreciate you giving us the time today.
Thanks, Darsh. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, of course. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about this recent report that ADB released and which you were a part of on the economic impacts of US tariffs in Cambodia. Of course, complicated year for Cambodia, I think. Can you share some of the main insights from this report, as well as maybe what the methodology was in kind of writing this report?
The best way to get a real read on what's happening in response to the tariff is to frequently survey and interview households, businesses, get customs data, keep frequently getting the views of organizations like TAFTAC that are dealing with the tariff issue every day. That's the best way to get a real read. But of course, the modeling has value as well, otherwise we wouldn't have done it, right? And the modeling takes historical data on Cambodia's trade performance and uses a set of mathematical rules on how households and businesses are expected to interact with each other to provide some new insights on the US tariff. And this was done using a model that is pioneered by Victoria University's Center for Policy Studies, that's in Australia. There's a wide range of findings. I think one of the great things about the model is that it provides very sector-specific findings and also provides a time profile on the impacts. So rather than just saying, this is the expected impact on GDP, it shows you year by year how the situation might evolve in response to a tariff. The main impact of the tariff really depends on how Cambodia's tariff is relative to its main competitors for exports to the United States. We've done this study over time, and we have results from July, from August, and from November. If you look at July, Cambodia's tariff was 36%, which was about 10 percentage points higher than its average competitor. And in that situation, the impact on GDP looks very poor. In fact, it would be quite devastating at 36%. We're looking at a 1% loss of GDP, 100,000 industrial jobs disappearing, a 7% increase in poverty because export-oriented firms tend to hire workers that live near the poverty line. Then we moved to August when there was a downward adjustment, and they moved it from 36% to 19%. In that situation, Cambodia's tariff was a little more favorable than its average competitor, and we saw a zero impact of the tariff. Now we reevaluated it again in November. There's been no change in Cambodia's tariff, but the US made some adjustment on some of the competitors of Cambodia. For example, People's Republic of China received a cut on their tariff, and that affects Cambodia's relative tariff. And in that scenario, there's actually a small negative impact of the tariff on Cambodia. So this is all just to say it's a very volatile situation. And I think more valuable than getting wrapped up in these small changes and how they affect the economy, it's more valuable to think about doing things like building trade competitiveness and trade facilitation through rules of origin compliance and also quality assurance certification.
So while this tariff crisis is sort of ongoing and Cambodia is working through it, of course, there's another major crisis the country is now facing through the border conflict with Thailand. What is the ADB's read on this situation and how it will actually impact Cambodia's economy?
This is a very difficult and developing situation. And of course, the impacts are already here for hundreds of thousands of families that have been affected either through displacement or through return migration. There's been a loss of livelihoods and security that is having very real microeconomic impacts right now. I think where there is less clarity is on the macroeconomic impact, and I mean in terms of GDP growth over the next year or two. It's different from the microeconomic impact in that while there are some clear negative effects, loss of income, loss of tourism receipts, there are also potentially some positive effects. For example, through import substitution, more domestic production, an increase in labor force. These are things that under certain conditions could be positive for the economy. Now, on net, it's most likely that the negative is going to outweigh the positive because this is a very difficult situation. And that's indeed what you see if you start looking at the economic indicators that are available to us right now. According to surveys, 2/3 of return migrants are having difficulty finding jobs. There's been a 20% reduction in tourist arrivals in recent months. There's also the bilateral trade is also depressed. So these are things that are pointing in a clear negative direction. The situation will become clearer as the situation hopefully settles down, but also as more data is collected. The Cambodia Development Resource Institute is currently fielding a detailed survey of migrants, and that's to build on surveys done previously by organizations like the National Bank of Cambodia, the International Organization for Labor and Migration. This is all valuable information for understanding the situation and also planning a response. From what we're seeing on the modeling side, we're just starting to explore how these pieces fit together. But it looks like, aside from the very obvious direct impact on households that have lost their sources of income, an important indirect channel will be through the tourism sector. And that makes the government's ongoing efforts through things like the temporary waiver on visas for people visiting from the People's Republic of China. These are very important. These are very important actions to promote the tourism sector.